Welcome to How It All Started podcast in North Iowa. My name is Erick Nganyange, and my guest today is Dave Peace. Welcome to the show, sir.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me. Can we start off by giving you flowers?
Oh,
sir,
here we go.
You've been incredibly active, and a lot of your guests, have this big contribution to North Iowa and Mason City specific. So do you. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I appreciate it, man.
And the fact that this is, taken a while to happen, I'm just honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Man, I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking your time.
Yeah.
You've been in the game of comedy a little over 10 years, is it?
Yeah, it was 12 years in February. So
oh, wow.
12 years of consistent comedy. My start to comedy has 3 different start dates because I got on stage for the first time ever at Acme Comedy Club. This is 22, 21, something like that. And I tried doing it for like, I don't know, 6 months or so. Like it didn't go well.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to do this no more. And then I moved to Mason City for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was in 2007. And then in 2008, there was a guy, Jeff, who had Toast Bar out here.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, I've done comedy like 7 times. And so he let me do comedy shows at his bar.
Yeah.
Then nothing really came of that. So I did that for like 6 times. And then I moved to Arizona, and then where it sort of became a thing. Yeah.
What drew you to the comedy? Was that something like your dream growing up, or was that like you got to that 20 years old and you'd be like, man, I think I can do this?
Listen, I want to lie to you, sir. I want to say like, I knew I would be
Since
a comedian.
I was 5.
Yeah. But that's not my story. My story is very much like I thought about it. I was just blown away when I saw Eddie Murphy stand up raw and delirious. Like they were
Was that the one with the red tracks?
Well, I ended up seeing both, but the one with the red, which is delirious, like that was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And my mother was like, you'll enjoy this. Like we grew up in a household where they'll let you listen to and watch whatever you want. They sometimes would provide some kind of context. And there was things that I was laughing at that I did not understand at that time. But she was like, yeah, Eddie Murphy is really funny. And I knew Eddie Murphy from like the movies, these movies where I'm like, he's all right. And then when I saw that stand, I'm like, you mean to tell me you can do this? So it was one of those things for me where by the time I finally got to Arizona and I was like, let's do it. We've talked about it. We've tried to do it. Let's just see what happens if we stick with it.
When you say we, you mean you and wife?
No,
or you and the family?
Well, I guess when I say we, that's probably a universal team thing, but specifically my sister who had moved out to Arizona, which was the reason why I went there, she went with me to the first open mic. And we were just kind of having that conversation. I'm like, well, let's see what happens.
Is your sister a comedian too?
No, she's just, she's incredibly funny and I love her and she's a huge supporter of mine. And I couldn't imagine anybody else going with me for that first one. So
I was thinking about this last night. What is the difference between being funny and being a comedian?
Oh, I love that question. The simplest answer is everybody is funny. Your neighbor, the drunk guy at the bar. The comedian aspect is really just the skill and the art and the commitment. Like if you can really practice the art of being funny, that's what kind of transitions you into like, okay, this is a profession, because there's comedians that do this for so many different reasons. And some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But at the end of the day, it's the person that puts the commitment first.
I was thinking more if I get on the stage. Because making it fun at Thanksgiving dinner and control that stage, man, that's completely different ball game.
It very much is.
Are you still getting nervous to get on the stage?
Absolutely.
Oh, you do?
Every single time, for the most part. Like I don't get the butterflies when I'm doing like an open mic, because an open mic is literally just a gym. You just go to practice. It can go well, it can go bad, as long as you can walk away with like some notes. I had a show this weekend at Funny Bones for the first time in Des Moines. And the first show, Friday night, it was a small show. It was about 50 people. And then last night, Saturday, we had, like that 150, like a better size. I was equally nervous for both shows. Just, you just want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. And I think those types of nerves allow you to bring out your best.
How was that? You said 22. you got on stage with open mic for the first time. How were you feeling inside when he's like, okay, everybody's kind of looking at me? What do I say? How was that feeling?
So again, when I say I have these 2 different or 3 different start dates, they're different experiences. So the first time I ever got on stage, again, Acme Comedy Club in Minneapolis, you get 3 minutes, and I didn't tell anybody. I just showed up. You sign your name, and if you put a star, you guaranteed to go because it's your first time. And I was the very first comic. They called me. I jumped on stage. Yeah.
Ooh.
I jumped on stage and I had 3 minutes, and it didn't go well. It just did not, to the point where I didn't get on stage again into an entire year. So just the first time ever. Yeah. It's one of those things where you think, hey, it's going to go this way. It doesn't. This is my comedy story. But then when I was in Arizona and I'm like, I'm going to commit to this, that was a different experience. That was, okay, I've done this a couple of times. Let me get on stage and see if I can make people laugh. The only problem with that is I was doing jokes from years ago that were very irrelevant. So it was one of those things where I got that laugh. Yeah. Like, okay, I want to keep at this. So yeah, it was a different experience. Technically my second time.
And 3 minutes is a long time.
It really is. You would be surprised. Like, people think, oh, that's not nothing. 3 minutes is a lifetime.
Oh, 3 minutes is a long time. You stand on the stage and everybody's staring at you. All right, bring it on. What do you got?
Yeah, like when I try to negotiate contracts or, like trying to get paid and booking and things like that, I have to try to explain we're paid in minutes. Like it's like, what's your hourly rate? It doesn't really work that way. Like we sort of get paid in these increments of 15 minutes. So, when we're talking 3 minutes, 5, 10, these are lifetimes for us.
Okay. Every time I hear a comedian talk, they always know which area or location is a tough crowd.
Tough in what aspect?
Let me give you this. I was listening to Corey Holcomb. So he was talking about, I think, a New York crowd. It's like, man, you go to New York, they don't want to hear none of the goofy stuff. They're going to start boring you.
Yes.
So which one for you when you go is like, okay.
So I unfortunately have never played New York. I will say areas, as far as markets, that have comedy more regularly, there is an expectation. Oh. It's like, we've seen a lot of comedy. What do you do that's different?
Yeah.
How are you an individual? So from that aspect, I think that is a challenge. But as far as actual crowds, I mean, I like to pretend I'm blessed to be as versatile as possible when it comes to being able to make anybody laugh. But I think there's no secret that Black crowds are the toughest. And if you can make them laugh, if you can establish that type of connection, then they easily become your favorite. So it's one of those if I walk into a room and it's all Black, I'm like, hey, let me just make sure I can get them on my side as soon as possible, and then we'll have a great time.
Good. And then you probably don't want to repeat any type of jokes. They'll be like, man, we heard that already.
That's what people don't understand, how hard stand-up comedy is. I have 2 albums out, or I typically can't go on stage and do my whole album. Yeah. It's like, you can't, as a musician, you can play your greatest hits. You can play your songs. When they see you and they enjoy you and they like you and they start following you, they want to see more jokes, bigger jokes, funnier this, funnier that. So you have to constantly be working on the next project.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's interesting, because in the music, you can listen to the same song over and over and over and over. The joke, once you hit me one time, second time, now I'm smiling.
Yes.
I'm not laughing as when you hit me the first time.
Exactly.
So it's like, all right, day piece, bring me something new now.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I already listened to the tape. What is there?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right about that. Have you ever been booed on the stage?
Never been booed.
Well, you're lucky. You're lucky.
Yeah. I've had 2 bad shows this year, and as great of shows that I've had, those 2 stick out the most. And they weren't terrible shows, because I'm at a point now where if I perform and I critique myself and I give myself less than an A. So if I do a show and it's a B+, I'm hard on myself. But I had 2 shows where, there was just jokes that bomb. I say the entire joke, no laughter. Or like I'll go into like a subject matter and it's just not growing the way that I'm supposed to. Because most comics, you build the laugh. You set it up. They start laughing a little bit. You give them a little bit more. They start laughing more. And then obviously by the time you get to the punchline or the end of the joke, that's that roar. It was like almost the opposite. It was like I would say something, they would start to laugh, and then by the time I got to the end of the joke, it was just almost silence again. So, I haven't been booed, but I've definitely had some like, how do we get out of this?
Okay, and how do you do that? How do you get out of that? Because if you do something like that, you can hear the pin drop.
Yeah,
so and you go like, I need to spin this one.
So the hope is that you have enough material that you can, pull out something when a joke or something doesn't land. I've gotten a lot better at crowd work, so that's kind of been a go-to for me. Like if something's not really working, I like to be an engaged comic. I like to make sure if I'm talking about marriage, I want to know who's married. Yeah. If I'm talking about being a parent, I want to know where the parents are in the room. So that's something that I sort of go to when things are not going as well. I'm like, well, what y'all want to talk about?
Are you one of those comedians that people should stay away from sitting in the front? You pick them apart?
No, I don't. Okay, so when I first started off, I think there was a cheap, and some comics use the term hack, which is really just like you're just doing what's already been done. There are comics out there that make a living on doing crowd work that is all rehearsed, that is all practice. So like if you say I'm a pharmaceutical rep, you're a drug dealer. Like they already have these already set planned things. So when I first started off, I sort of followed that. I was like, okay, if we have a teacher, I'm going to say this, or if we have a doctor, I'm going to say this. And I think I would try to take people apart just to make the rest of the room laugh. Now I don't find any pleasure in that. So if you sit in front, I think you will have a better experience because sometimes I will point you out or I will engage with you, but nothing I try and do is malicious. Like I'd never like pick on somebody for the simple fact of trying to tear them down or just to make everybody laugh. It'd be to really like raise them up and make them a part of it.
You see, that's only comedian thinks nothing they do is malicious until you're the one who's sitting in the front and the whole crowd is listening to you. It's like, well, I hope he's not going to point at me. I've seen the people walk out. It's like, no, he's coming down the line. It's not going to be me. Yeah, no. How do you come up with your materials?
The first few years was about saying things that were funny. And I think I accomplished that. And I think that's how I grew as fast as I did. But there was a point in my comedy career very early on where I realized I wasn't talking about anything. And that's the substance conversation where it's like, when you are just getting on stage and saying funny things, that's great. Yeah. But that next level is, what are you saying that connects to the audience? What are they learning about you? Yeah. What is your perspective? Like, why do you think the way do you think? So to answer your question, it really comes from living in Iowa, my marriage and our kids. I think they gave me just a new perspective on how I really see myself, how I really see the world. So I'm one of those people that's like, not to say, if you choose not to have kids, that's fine. But when you have kids, I think life changes. It's like
it's different.
I mean, I remember I wanted to go skydiving. Like, I want to do that. Like, then I had a kid. I'm like, no, that's dumb. I don't want to do that.
That's not a good idea. I might not come back. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Your material changed from the time when you didn't have kids to now you're a father. You're kind of aware of how you do jokes. Yeah, definitely.
I just feel like it's attached to something. Okay. And I think that's super important. It's one thing to have a joke, but I think it's more important of why you're telling the joke. And I think sometimes people just get on. And again, I was a victim. I'm not a victim, but I was an example of just, I want to say things that are funny. I want to say things that I think that they want to hear from me. And that's the wrong direction to go in. So at this point now, if I think of a joke or if I share a joke, it's coming from something that is either personally connected to me or someone that I know and love. Look, it's one of those things. So Yeah, having kids and that it just changed. Like, I don't just want to get on stage and say stuff.
Whatever you want to say. Yeah. Are you conscious like, oh man, I'm about to say this joke. I don't know how my kid will take this.
Yeah. Well, my son specifically. So I have 2 albums. My first album, I talked about him not being good at sports, which he's not. Yeah. And he heard it and he got sad.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, are you? You know what I'm saying? So when I did the second album, I kind of brought that up again, but I just found different ways to talk about it. I also I believe in the art. Mm-hmm. So like, I think there's nothing better than just that raw, authentic, this is how it's supposed to come out, and these are the words that I'm using. So from that element, I would never not tell a joke if I truly believed in it. And I wouldn't be really conscious of how I say it and who it may alienate, because that's not the purpose of the joke. The purpose for me is to create something from the material and try to make it funny and try to make as many people laugh. Yeah. So I don't like overthink myself in that way. And then I make fun about my wife. I make fun about just about everybody. And I just hope and pray that they're just like along for the ride.
Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
Move out of Detroit.
Look at you doing your research, bro.
Hey, listen, man, I'm not playing with this.
You are impressive.
I'm not playing with this, man. This is what I do. Move to Minnesota.
Yes.
Go to college. I'm very, very interested about this.
Yeah.
You were in college for 30 days.
30 days, sir.
And you say, nah, this is not for me.
Well,
I'm impressed, by the way, because most of us, we are too late to figure out that this is not for me. 4 years down the road, waste a lot of money, a lot of time. How did you know that fast? Like, nah, I don't want to waste any time here, any money.
Well, that was the conversation. It was money. So it was one of those, Sally Mae loans where like, I think I'm good. I pack up everything. I move to a completely new state and I start school, and I was going for television production. There was no passion there. I think there was a point in my life where, because I didn't go to college right after high school, it was a year later.
Okay.
And so I think there was just a point in my life where I'm like, everybody else is in school, let me do it. And I go to school and it's fine. But at the end of the first month, I went to the guidance counselor or whoever and sat down and was like, oh, you owe us some money. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a check for us? I'm like, I don't have a check. I don't have money. What are you talking? I thought I had a loan. And he was like, no. I was like, okay, well, this is my last day. So
oh, really?
It was really a financial situation that drove me out. But again, it's one of those things where if all those things don't happen, I don't leave Detroit, which is really, that was the goal.
Yeah.
It was to leave, find a better opportunity, find a better, navigation. And if all those things don't happen, I don't think I leave Detroit at that time. So yeah, I ended up leaving after 30 days and figuring, get a job and figure some things out. So,
yeah. And that's how you ended up Mason City Foot Locker?
Yeah, so I got so going from Detroit to Minnesota, I was with my best friend who was also at the same college. And he was like, I'm moving back to Detroit. And it was in that moment where I had to figure out, do I move back with him or do I stay? So I decided to stay in Minnesota and, like I said, get a job and figure things out. And, I was walking miles to work and I got a second job. And then eventually I started working for a shoe company called Finish Line in Minnesota. And I, worked there and moved up the ranks, got promoted, worked at Mall of America. And then when it was ready for my first store, they said, you can either go to Grand Forks, North Dakota, or we have this new store that's only like a year old in Mason City, Iowa. And I'm like, I remember taking my first drive down here, and I was just like, what am I looking at? What is this? What corn and grass? And I saw a cow. I'm like, where am I? And my first store was in Mason City, and I was here for 2 years, and I was like, is there anywhere else I can go? And it was through the company that got me to Arizona. So that's how I moved to Arizona.
Okay, that's where you ended up in Arizona. I'm one of your fan on your podcast.
Yeah.
And some of the episodes in there is my favorite, and I want to expand on those a little bit.
Let's go.
3 Men is one of my favorite.
Really?
Yeah. When you talk,
I love that. That's probably one of the first episodes that I can remember.
Yeah.
Where I got as personal. When I started the podcast, my podcast is called the Peace Talk Podcast, and I started it, I think, right before the pandemic. So, 2020. And I just like, hey, I just want to talk about stuff. I'm going to talk about comedy, or I want to share like my adventures on the road. And the more I did it, the more I found it to be a really great element for me to share stories that I don't share on stage.
Yeah.
Or, like what I talk about on the podcast, I don't really have an avenue for. So I just found myself getting deeper and kind of peeling back the layers. And that particular episode was one of those where like, yeah, let's share this.
Your brother
Daniel, yeah.
Daniel, he's still locked up?
Oh, yeah.
How old was he when he got locked up?
He's a young man, so he's 6 years older than me. I was in high school at this time, so we're talking probably 22, 23, something like that.
He got life?
No, he should be out in like 10 years, I think. But he's been in there for quite some time.
Wow. You guys grew up together?
We did. So as I learned a lot about our relationship, especially in my adulthood, like my brother was the first guy that I looked up to. Mm-hmm. And, so when our dad was around, it was like, you're the guy. When he decided to make the decisions that he made and start selling drugs and start doing this and being promiscuous with women, like when he started living that life, I was like, I don't really want to do that.
Where did that come from you? Because like you say, your big brother's big influence.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we follow them in the path that they're going.
I think it's because I was a nerd. I think if I can go back, like what saved me, it's like those things just didn't attract me. Like I was like, I want to play with my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. And I think it also has something to do with us being 6 years apart, because sometimes when you have an older brother, you get to be in high school at the same time, or
like
you get
2
to be
or 3, 4 years apart.
No, I'm in elementary. He's in high school.
Yeah.
By the time I'm in high school, again, he's locked up. So those things just didn't do it for me. And I think part of it was like, I'm in Detroit. I see this. This doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, it happened all the time.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And your biological father, you talk about him quite a bit. Are you thinking about amending with him at all?
So my dad his name is Dane, and my brother, my father, there were certain aspects of my life I did not share publicly. So I didn't talk about this on stage. So again, it was just me saying yada, yada, yada. Then I got to a point where I'm like, this stuff is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's growing as a man. Let's start confronting some of these things. Let's start like talking about it. So here's the thing. As funny as I make these topics, there's nothing there right now. And I say that from a place of, not to say I'm at peace with everything, but there was so much of my life. I'm 38 now. There was so much of my life where I wanted my dad to be a part of my life, or to at least like, oh, you're doing pretty good, son. Let me, come around. That's all gone now. There's not like a need to amend or sit down or talk or any of those things. Now, I'm not saying like if he made the effort, I would blow him off, or like I wouldn't. But from my place, I don't need any of those things anymore.
Yeah. Because you called the episode 3 Men, that basically 3 men that impacted your life.
Exactly.
You kind of looked up to them. What are one of the positive things maybe you might say you got from your biological pops?
No, I don't think. I mean, the fact that he made me, I think is probably that's.
Hey, there you go. There you go. There's always
he's
a way
definitely,
to look at it.
He's get credit for that, but
he left a long time ago when you.
Yeah, like I feel like the episode was gonna be, I want to lie to you. Like I wanted to say that, like, yeah, there are some things about him that I admired, or there's some things that I think I could take away from him. But as I think about it today, I think he's really just been the best example of what not to be. And I think a lot of men use that, but I don't think it could be any greater than when I had my first kid. When I had my first kid, me and his mom, we weren't together. In fact, we were on the brink of breaking up. So like, it's a good chance if we don't have this kid, we don't stay together and get married and have more kids. But I just couldn't imagine in that moment of not being in my kid's life. Like, no matter what. Nah, bro, you took the easy way out. Like, he was like, whatever the situation is. And I can't imagine, like, not wanting to be with my kid or taking care of him or seeing them. And then he just, like, tapped out. Wow. So
What about your stepdad?
I think what I liked the most about him, and I loved his effort. I liked the way that he tried in a lot of ways, because when we think about these situations, you know, he's a stepdad. He has kids of his own, so he has his own responsibilities. My mom has these 2 boys. One is on, you know, a bad downward
path,
spiral, and then it's just me who don't really know where I fit in. I think his attempt to be a dad to me as well.
Yeah.
Try to take care of my mom in the ways that he did in the positive aspects. I think those were things where I'm like, I respect you. I respect that from you, because you didn't have to do it.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
how about your brother?
I think Daniel. So we don't talk right now. We go through this thing where we talk, and you know, then we don't talk for some years, and we go back and forth. The last time we stopped talking because of the STEMI checks that came out. He wanted. I don't know if you know this, but prisoners, they got STEMI checks too.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
And you had to apply for them. And we applied for one, and one didn't come for him, or he got denied or something. And so my brother just assumed or thought that me and my wife took the money. Like we cashed it, we got it, and we were like, oh, you know. And so he applied the second time, and he got the money. And after that, we were like, well, I need some time away, because he was super disrespectful to my wife. And my whole life, our relationship has been me trying to be the version of younger brother that he knew. And there were some times where I wanted to be like, I'm not really that kid anymore.
Right. I didn't think about that, because if he's in there for 20 years, you're 38.
Yeah, it's like
his mentality is thinking about.
Right. And so I think I try my best to be the most comfortable version for him. And I don't want to do that. I don't think that's how we should be as people. Like it's, you got to adjust to me and not always trying to adjust to everybody. So one thing that I take away from him is I think he is one of the most mentally tough individuals that I've ever known. And listen, I've never been to prison. I hope I never go. The strength, I think the mental toughness that he has displayed, you know, most of my life, I think it's pretty admirable. And I think that's a level that we need, even outside in the real world. I think we need that type of, you know, thick skin or mental toughness. So.
Man, by the time he comes home, if he's 10 years, he's 6 years older than you, so he's what, 44? Coming home 10 years would be 54. Man, a lot of things change.
Yeah.
I hope you get him prepared for that, because
I mean, things are different, you know, especially with technology. Like things are a lot different 5 years ago and 10 years ago. We're talking, you know, 30 plus years of not being integrated into this society.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be tough for him, but I think he'll be able to hopefully manage. So.
Yeah, just tell him not to go back to Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not to go back to Detroit, man. You got a sister?
No, well, it's a best friend.
Okay, okay. So you only got one brother?
Just one brother, one sibling.
Okay. The AI game, how you think that would change the comedy? Do you see anything positive about it, or you
mean
nervous?
You mean like
the artificial intelligence?
Well, first of all, I'm not that like I'm not that worried. First of all,
yeah.
But secondly, I'm not that, I guess, educated on how that can impact. I know I hear stories and theories. I'll say here's what happened to the comedy game in the last decade. That's been interesting. Been social media comedy. Been memes. Like, I mean, I can't remember what my joke is, but I remember having a joke and going on Facebook and seeing the joke in a meme. And it's like, this is the end. This is going to be the end of comedy. You have celebrity TikTokers and IGs with, you know, such and such followers that are headlining and doing clubs are like 2 years in. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. So I think with AI or any other new technology, I think it's just going to create some types of new challenges. I don't think that's going to be the end all.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, if a pandemic didn't shut everything down, or a Y2K, I think we'll be okay. So
I mean, the only thing I was thinking is like the AI can copy a piece voice, and then we can keep recreating.
Oh yeah,
more jokes, and then you might not get paid for that.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's scary from that aspect. I understand those early on concerns, but I just feel like it's been around way too longer to let that stop.
Yeah. Any one of your kids, you think they get some comedy?
Oh, absolutely. So all of our kids are named after celebrities.
Yeah. I heard that.
We have Drake, Kyrie, and Kobe. And Kyrie is the most like me, so he's my favorite. He's the only one that can make me laugh when I'm angry. Like he's just wild. He has that middle child syndrome where he tries to overcompensate and get the attention, but he's genuinely funny. I think if any kid, as of right now, and he's only 5, followed in that kind of footprint, I think it would easily be him.
Oh, okay. So do you feel like a little bit responsible to create some type of environment so he can continue the Day Peace legacy?
Yes and no. Yes, from the aspect of what I hope to accomplish that I don't specifically talk to my kids about is I want to create their ability to feel like it's possible. Like find things that you are passionate about, put in a ton of work and develop great work ethics, that kind of thing, and then go for it. That's what I like to try to do by leading by example with comedy. So whatever field that they choose, I want them to have that type of confidence because they're going to need it. One of my favorite things, kind of coming from that episode that we were talking about, is there's a point where every young boy, you have to become your own man. And
Absolutely.
If they make decisions that kind of pull them back into entertainment or comedy, that's great. But I want them to go out and figure that out on their own. So what I like to do is give them all the tools that I didn't have and send them out in the world. And when they come back, when they figure out some things, then I like to help coach that.
Yeah. But is there a difference between, because your real name is Dalen?
Real name is Dalen, but it's spelled wrong. My mom, she was on drugs. Yeah, she was on drugs in the hospital. And they saw Bob Dylan on the TV. And it was like, that's a great name, Bob Dalen. And so they named me Dalen, Dylan. Most of my life I went through trying to explain that, in school, Dylan piece here. And I'm like, it's Dalen. And they have to write little notes on the phonetically say it. But I've always had this separation of self where like personas. I like being this when I need to be this. And I like to be that when I think the situation calls for it. So moving to Minnesota, it was like this mask of this is who I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to get through things. And so I became Day Day. When I started doing more corporate work, they would even call me Day Day, which was pretty cool. But the older I got, I was like, I don't want everybody to call me that. I want that to be almost like a term for people that I'm more closer with. Yeah. So then it just became Day.
Okay.
So, when I first started doing comedy, and I still go by this name, Comedian Day Day, you get to a point where you just want to use a first and a last name. Yeah. So it's just Day Peace.
Day Peace. Is there a difference between Dalen Peace and Day Peace?
I like to pretend. Yeah. Okay. We were talking about this the other day. If I see people out in the real world and I'm not performing, I don't want to talk to you. If we're at Target and we're buying soap, hey, how's it going? But if I'm performing and you're at the club and I want to talk it up, I want to give you an experience. I like to pretend Dalen is, the family, people don't believe this, but a lot of comedians are shy and soft-spoken in certain situations. So I think Dalen is in the purest form, the quiet. I like to be in the background person. The comedian aspect is like the entertainer, the spotlight, all that stuff. And I don't always want that.
Yeah, interesting. So you are more reserved as a...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What does the name Day Peace mean to you? I like the ring of that name, though.
Well, yeah. People do ask if Peace is my last real name. It's my real last name. When I think about it, I think that's the mature version of the comedian that I am. Because like I said, it started off as Comedian Day Day, and even when I'm telling jokes, I'll refer to myself as Day Day, because what I learned is when I say Day on stage, people think I'm saying Dave. So they're like, we thought your name was Dave. If I'm not headlining, you don't see my name. That's kind of the mix up. So I go by Day Day still, and I use that a lot. But Day Peace for me is the mature version of where I am right now.
Oh, I like that. How do you practice your jokes? When you get in, you say, okay, this is the one.
I don't anymore.
Oh, you don't? You just go on the stage cold?
So don't get me wrong. The last time I practiced my jokes was when I was preparing for both albums.
Okay.
That's one-on-one in front of the mirror over and over again, recording myself, listening to it. But now I take the material that I have that I've developed over the last couple of years, and I just splice in the new stuff. If I'm performing, I'm doing the stuff that I have prepared, that I've done enough to feel really confident about. Yeah. And then I'll just sneak in some new stuff I've never said on stage before, premise that I think could become a joke in the future, and I just kind of sneak them in. Or if I'm at an open mic. But that is, for me, my version of practicing.
When this is all said and done, what type of impact do you want to have in the world?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know if I thought a lot about it, but I know one of the things that probably matter the most to me, and this is something that I kind of more recently developed, is you can be more than one thing. So when George Floyd was murdered, and just with my social media in general, sometimes I find me wanting to talk about things and not wanting to talk about things. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes people look to me to talk about things, and it's like, I care about these things, but I don't necessarily have an opinion about all these things. And so I was kind of finding myself in like a box, which I don't particularly care for. I don't want to be like, he's only this type of comedian, or he's only this type of person. So when the George Floyd thing happened, I started becoming a lot more vocal, and I started kind of sliding into this activism role where I was like, can I be an activist? Because I want to talk about some serious stuff. I want to educate people, but at the same time, I still want to do my silly jokes. I want to talk about my kids. And it was through that year, I'm like, you can do both. So I think when it's all said and done, I want to have been able to entertain and make people laugh, connect complete strangers, and, sort of pull them a part of this journey. But I also want them to feel like there was a message. There was a reason why he did what he did, or he said what he said. I want people to be like, he was funny. He was a good father, good husband, and he has something to say.
I think, was it 2019 when Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Oscars? Yeah. And he stepped down because of some of the comments he made a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was like 7
years ago towards
his kid.
His kids about it also kind of took a shot to a gay community.
Yeah.
How far back do you think we need to dig on people's life before we say, okay, it was stupid enough at that age?
All right, so here's the thing. Personally, I don't care. I think it's dumb. I think if you're running for Congress, let's dig up some stuff, because let's see a pattern, because I think that's the idea is, what did you say? Who were you? Who did you used to be? And how much more different are you today? Okay, so Paula Deen, okay, she was the fat white lady who was cooking amazing food. She said the N-word, and they took everything from her, like everything. Listen, I'm not saying she should get a pass, but there's no recorded footage. It was a transcript. Has she ever
done that before?
And then there's a country singing guy. I can't think of his name right now, which is interesting that I can't. He has this song, and it's super catchy. Last Night, but he has footage of calling a black man the N-word, and he's not canceled. He's not like his sales are up.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, like, why are we so selective with who we cancel? Who can say this? Who can't say that? I think that's an issue.
Selective outrage.
Right. Unless you're a government or public official, I don't care. I find some of it interesting. And I think some of these situations, it is like, okay, but for the Oscar thing, for example, with Kevin Hart, I don't like how it all played out. It was one of those things where, like, hey, Kevin, can you apologize? He's like, yeah, I apologized already, but we want you to apologize this way.
Yeah.
To these, to this group, and do it this way, or we won't let you host. And I don't think that's fair.
We want you to do a tour.
Yeah, it was
apology tour.
But that's what actually ended up happening. Like he didn't do the hosting thing, and then he still ended up going on this tour of having to explain. I mean, how would you feel if someone dug something up and you had to explain it, from 10 years ago? Yeah. It's like, let it go.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna end with this note. let's say today's your last day. What are the top 5 things you're going to be regretting about life in general?
I've had a good life, sir. I gotta be honest with you.
Good. That's very good. That's positive.
I don't live in that. So let me say this, and this is kind of recent, and I've been wanting to talk about it more and more.
Yeah.
This year has been probably the most depressed I've felt, and it's new to me. And I also used to have a stigma of like what depression was, and like I didn't really quite get it, and anxiety, the whole thing. And I realized I've been working more than I kind of have ever. Last year was the most successful year for me comedy. And it's like, how do we grow from that?
Yeah.
And my answer was, let's do more cities, more states. Let's just travel more. And I'd find myself like after a show where I kill, like incredible shows. I sell merchandise. I'm happy. I get to my hotel room. I'm just lonely. And I get depressed. And, I drove, 9 hours to Indianapolis on a Saturday, did the show, slept, and then came back home Sunday, drove another 9 hours. So I'm just finding myself alone and with my thoughts. And sometimes that makes me depressed. And I didn't quite understand it. And I say all that to say, I'm okay with it. Like, there's, those are just moments that, my mind is going other places. But when I can sit down and look at my life, I feel so incredibly blessed. It's not perfect. It's not this, but when I say I feel so rich and it's not financially, I know that's a blessing.
I like that. Well, Dave Peace is blessed, man. Hey, thanks, bro. Thanks for taking your time, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was Dave Peace, baby.